Chapter 281, The Monthly Exam. What are the conditions? Tell me. All the young wizards, including Joey, asked excitedly. I don't teach people who lack self-discipline. Only those who achieve a top 3 personal score in the monthly evaluations can choose to accept my system training, Anduin explained. Violating discipline, breaking school rules, and causing the deduction of house points will not only affect your grades, but also leave a personal score record with me. Conversely, adding points to the house, observing discipline, and excelling in monthly exams can improve your personal grades. Seeing everyone's high interest, Anduin decided to include participation in the training as part of the monthly rewards. After hearing Anduin's words, many people around fell silent. To receive the chief's unique guidance, one must have no disciplinary records, excellent grades, and actively contribute to the house. Joey's heart sank. He had already violated discipline once this month, and his grades were not good. However, the desire to become stronger still drove him. Understood, Chief. I will definitely work hard. Joey gritted his teeth and promised firmly. Well, do your best, Anduin nodded, then put away the humanoid target and floated away. The people who stayed behind felt a fire ignite in their hearts. To qualify, they needed to perform outstandingly, and the simplest and most direct way was to improve their grades. Many turned their attention to the other department representatives. Since their foundation was not solid, they could only spend more time to remedy it. Vivienne, Joey called out, stopping Vivienne, who was about to return to the dormitory to rest. My history of magic is terrible. Can you help me, please? Now? Vivienne looked at him speechlessly. The tutoring session was obviously over. Please, it's good to buy some time, Joey pleaded, looking at Vivienne pitifully. In the end, Vivienne, who couldn't stand Joey's persistence, stayed in the common room to tutor him for more than an hour. Joey was not the only one with this idea. Everyone else in the stone hall was also taking action, either begging other department representatives for help or taking out their textbooks and heading to the common room for self-study. Unexpectedly, this simple practical tutoring class ignited everyone's enthusiasm for learning. Many actually stayed up until midnight to study. However, their sudden enthusiasm came at a price. Several of them were directly caught by Professor Hogg for staying up all night and being late for class. Even so, since that night, many young wizards continued to act this way. Although the self-study time was free for 2 hours, many of them spontaneously stayed behind after the evening self-study to make up lessons with the study group. After finishing the supplementary lessons, many young wizards remained in the common room, pulling the department representatives to stay for tutoring. Their enthusiasm even angered several department representatives, who finally managed to get rid of them after jointly boycotting the tutoring sessions. Nevertheless, these students still stayed up late to study on their own. To give everyone more opportunities to practice spellcasting, Anduin specially vacated a dungeon and placed humanoid targets in it. He allowed those who wanted to practice to do so, but stipulated that each person could only cast spells 10 times at a time to avoid malicious competition. He planned to make a few more targets in the future, but for now, they would use this one to test its trouble-free running time. Outside the academy, the young wizards also showed almost crazy enthusiasm in the classroom, regardless of their grade or year. In class, whenever the professor asked a question, the young Slytherin wizards were always the first to raise their hands. This was typically a behavior associated with Ravenclaw students. The change surprised not only the professor, but also the students from other houses who attended the class. This behavior became increasingly pronounced. To earn points and avoid mistakes, these young wizards began to compete with each other daily. They vied for who could add the most points to their house, who studied the latest, who polished their shoes the brightest, and eventually they became somewhat obsessive. To avoid losing points, they even remained silent while eating. After meals, they would quickly find a place to read or queue up to practice casting spells. As the month progressed, Anduin continued to enforce strict discipline during the weekly meetings. He punished students who violated the rules and increased the number of push-ups to 50 for everyone. These regular warnings helped most students maintain good habits. However, not everyone could sustain such energy and drive. Some students, due to years of ingrained habits, still inadvertently broke the rules. A few young wizards struggled to fully integrate into the group. Seeing no hope in the competition and lacking a strong sense of honor, they began to slack off. Their grade leader found it challenging to manage this situation. Because these students made one or two small mistakes each week, they had to do 50 to 100 push-ups during the weekly meetings. This routine inadvertently improved their physical fitness, and the corporal punishment no longer pressured them. They gradually adapted to the rules, maintaining discipline, but occasionally being caught off guard without feeling guilty or vigilant. They even started to give off an old-fashioned, complacent vibe. For these lackluster individuals, Anduin decided to find an opportunity to address their behavior. However, the immediate priority was the first monthly exam. The monthly exam was scheduled for the last Saturday of the month. Due to the tight schedule, Anduin divided the exams into written tests and practical spellcasting tests. The written exams were held in the morning, with each class having its own exam. The proportion of written exams would decrease in the senior years. Anduin organized different exam times based on the number of subjects and the grade level. First and second grades had 7 courses, with each exam lasting 40 minutes. They primarily focused on written exams, so their exam time was relatively long. Grades 3 to 5 had 9 courses, with each exam lasting 30 minutes. Grades 6 and 7 only took subjects required for the OWL certificate, with each written test scheduled for 30 minutes. This arrangement was because in the senior grades, the proportion of written exams was already quite low, except for theoretical subjects. Additionally, Anduin wanted them to complete the written tests early and use the rest of the morning for practical tests. End of this chapter. Chapter 282. Cheating. In the early morning, students from grades 6 and 7 completed all their exam content ahead of schedule. Given their smaller numbers and generally good grades, they were able to finish quickly. After completing their exams, they assisted as examiners for the practical exams of the lower and middle grades in the afternoon. Due to the complexity of the subjects, it was impossible to conduct all the exams in the common room. Therefore, Anduin asked a few professors to lend some empty classrooms. In the afternoon, these senior wizards escorted the students to the corresponding test centers to complete their practical tests, similar to physical examinations in the Muggle world. After finishing one subject, they moved to the next classroom for the subsequent subject, including potions. Anduin borrowed all the necessary exam materials from Snape, who had previously promised full cooperation. Snape, observing the changes in the college, found the current state of Slytherin House perplexing. He no longer dared to enter the common room. Whenever he appeared in the dungeon stone hall, everyone stood at attention and greeted him, their nervousness palpable. Sometimes, he wondered if Anduin had gone too far, but since he had promised not to interfere, he refrained from doing so. This led to Snape looking at Anduin more strangely, making Anduin uncomfortable. The end of the first month of the school year finally arrived, and the entire Slytherin house was preparing according to Anduin's arrangement. All the young wizards were nervously preparing for the exam, knowing that the grade and individual with the highest comprehensive score would receive the chief reward. The results of the monthly exam played a significant part in the overall score, so everyone was ready to give it their all. On the last Saturday of the week, all the young wizards woke up at 7 a.m., got dressed, had breakfast in the auditorium, and assembled in the common room by 7:30 a.m. The collective action of the Snake Academy alarmed many wizards and professors, given the early hour and the scale of the gathering. In the stone hall of the Slytherin dungeon, the young wizards were solemnly divided into 3 groups, sitting in different areas. After Anduin's announcement, the monthly exam officially started. This exam was very different from the preliminary exam at the beginning of the school year, and its significance was also different. From the start, the atmosphere in the dungeon was quite serious, with no noise other than the sound of quills on parchment. The senior students felt relatively less pressure. Their grades were good, and they were not part of this competition. Anduin had given them corresponding benefits and permissions, These exams were more to help them review and prepare for the ultimate exam. After nearly an hour, some senior students completed the exam. These were the students who only needed to pass 2 courses for the Newt certificate. After handing in their test papers, Anduin took them to the empty classroom prepared beforehand for the spellcasting test. Other senior students who finished the exam later also rushed over after handing in their papers. This staggered timing allowed all the senior students to finish their exams in one morning. But what about the young wizards left in the common room? Wouldn't they be tempted to cheat? This was a test of their self-control, and also a small test set by Anduin. The entire common room was under Hog's surveillance. He was eager to rectify any misconduct and ensure the integrity of the exams. The monthly exams in the morning were progressing steadily according to the planned schedule, and the exams for the senior grades were expected to be completed on time, just as Anduin had predicted. As he was about to evaluate the last few 6th-year wizards, he suddenly paused, as if something had disturbed him. "Velen, can you help me complete the transfiguration spell test for the last 3 students? Just follow the previous standards. I need to step out for a moment. After the test, you can go directly to the common room," Anduin said, squinting his eyes and tilting his head towards Velen. "Huh? Oh, okay," Velen replied, somewhat puzzled by Anduin's sudden departure, but agreeing out of habit. After leaving the classroom, Anduin immediately cast an illusion spell on himself and quietly made his way back to the common room of the snake yard. The reason for his abrupt reaction was a summons from Hog. Someone had attempted to cheat during the exams. According to Hog's message, the cheating spanned multiple subjects, which was a blatant disregard for the rules. Upon returning to the common room, Anduin quickly located the cheating student with Hog's guidance. It was Hater Chris, a 3rd-year student with average grades who had violated discipline multiple times before. Hater was known for being a slippery character. His method of cheating was straightforward yet cunning. He had a cheat sheet hidden in a piece of parchment that appeared ordinary. During the exam, he would secretly channel magic into the parchment, causing the answers to appear. It seemed to be some kind of magical artifact. If he hadn't used it so frequently, Hog might not have caught him. Anduin didn't expose Hater on the spot. Instead, he watched the cheating coldly and then retreated calmly. During the afternoon exams, Anduin remained composed, acting as if he hadn't noticed anything. He continued with the spellcasting exams for the middle and lower grades as planned until all the exams were completed for the day. Hater, believing his cheating had gone unnoticed, continued to chat and joke with his classmates. The next day, the college's monthly regular meeting was scheduled for the afternoon, with the morning reserved for the representatives of each department to correct the test papers. By noon, Anduin had learned the final test results. In the afternoon, all the young wizards gathered in the stone hall, waiting for the monthly meeting to begin. When the time came, Anduin appeared on the high platform in the common room, looking at everyone calmly with a slight smile. The monthly regular meeting for September is now officially started. The meeting agenda includes the following items. 1. Publication of test results and grade rankings. 2. Announcement of the grade with the highest comprehensive score this month, as well as the top 3 comprehensive scores, and distribution of rewards. 3. Notification of personnel who violated discipline this week and their punishments. Hearing Anduin finally address what they were most eager to know, the young wizards widened their eyes and stared intently at the high platform. Chapter 283, Monthly Meeting. Anduin looked at the expectant eyes of everyone, smiled slightly, and continued, "First of all, let's announce the results. In this monthly exam, everyone in the academy has passed or above. This is a good start. We've arranged the grades by performance. The highest proportion of excellent subjects is in the 3rd grade, reaching 45%. Following that is the 4th grade at 4%, and then the 2nd grade at 42%. Although this is an improvement, our goal is to reach 2%, so everyone still needs to work hard." Upon hearing Anduin's announcement that their grade had the highest scores, the 3rd-year students immediately became excited. Each of them was overjoyed and wanted to cheer and applaud, but they restrained themselves, remembering the importance of discipline, and just looked at the chief expectantly. Applause if you want. Everyone, give a round of applause to the top 3 as a sign of encouragement, Anduin said calmly, noticing their eagerness. With Anduin's permission, a burst of applause filled the stone hall, with the 3rd grade students clapping the most vigorously. Okay, now I will announce the grade and individual with the highest comprehensive score in the whole academy. Anduin stretched out his hand to calm everyone down and continued. Hearing this, the crowd became even more excited. The grade with the highest comprehensive score this time is the 3rd grade. Your grades are the highest in the house. At the same time, you have won 22 points for Slytherin this month, ranking 2nd in the house, second only to the 24 points of the 4th grade. Disciplinary points deducted were 9, which is the 2nd least deducted points in grades 1 to 5. Anduin once again focused his attention on the 3rd grade crowd. Hearing their names called again, the 3rd grade students almost jumped up excitedly. After Anduin nodded, they applauded excitedly again, their faces flushed with pride. Okay, after the grade rankings are announced, let's take a look at the individual rankings. The wizards whose names I call, please stand up, Anduin said flatly, after waiting for everyone's excitement to pass. First of all, Ibrahimovic, a 3rd-year student, won 1st place this month without a single disciplinary penalty and earned 7 points for the college. He also achieved 6 O's and 3 E's in the monthly exam, the highest in the whole college. The 2nd place is Jane from the 5th grade. She also had no disciplinary penalties this month and earned 7 points for the college. She achieved 5 O's and 4 E's in the monthly exam. The 3rd place is Mona, also from the 5th grade. She earned 5 points for the college without a single disciplinary penalty this month. Her monthly exam results are the same as Jane's, with 5 O's and 4 E's. The 3 students who had been named stood up excitedly, greeted by the applause of all the students in the school. Anduin glanced at Mona from time to time, and Joey felt a little disappointed. Joey, to be honest, your grades have improved the most in the whole school, and your comprehensive score has reached 4th place. Keep working hard, Anduin said, making a special effort to encourage him. Joey, who had been feeling down, nodded excitedly upon hearing the chief's words of encouragement. Okay, you all know that I will reward the grade with the highest score and the top 3 individuals. I will now announce the content of the reward. Anduin waved his hand, and a small table appeared out of nowhere, with 3 pairs of leather boots quietly placed on it. Beside the table stood a familiar human target. Anduin first pointed to the humanoid target. This is a new one I made. The 1st-ranked grade will have the right to practice using this humanoid target for the next month. Additionally, I will allocate an empty dungeon as your exclusive practice room. Hearing this, the students' excitement reached new heights. News spread quickly, and everyone in the 3rd grade secretly waved their fists in excitement. This reward was exactly what they had been hoping for. Ever since Anduin developed this kind of humanoid target, it had become the favorite of the entire college. Everyone wanted to use it for practice because the visible progress and strengthening were incredibly motivating. Previously, there was only one target available for grades 1 to 5, and Anduin had specially assigned it. Although the seniors wouldn't come to take it, using it daily required a long wait. Now, having an exclusive target for their grade, even if only for a month, was a significant advantage. If they continued to take 1st place each month, it would essentially belong to them indefinitely. Anduin then pointed to 3 pairs of leather boots on the table next to him. These are alchemy prop boots I made from high-quality cowhide. They have multiple functions, and the magic effect lasts for 2 years. You can choose one of these, or you can accept my training. Mona and Janie chose Anduin's training without hesitation, having worked hard for this opportunity. Ibrahimovic, already training under Anduin for some time, opted for a pair of low-profile phase shoes. Well, the happy time is short-lived, Anduin said, quickly putting away his faint smile after distributing the rewards. He then looked at everyone with a serious expression. Next is the disciplinary briefing that everyone loves to see. With the change in Anduin's demeanor, the atmosphere in the common room turned icy cold. The previously happy students now wore uneasy expressions, anticipating the punishment awaiting them. Third grade, Hatter Chris. Second grade, Gal Murray. Fourth grade, Dante Mulenga. Anduin called out, narrowing his eyes slightly. It's you three again, walking side by side in the hallway for a long time. Why? Do you think standing in a row makes you look capable and majestic, as if the entire corridor belongs to you? The three named students stood up straight, their faces showing a mix of embarrassment and disapproval. It was clear this wasn't their first time being punished. I really don't understand, Anduin sneered, looking at their expressions. Why do you still make such low-level mistakes after so long? This isn't the first time you've violated discipline. Maybe my punishment has been too lenient, or perhaps you've become immune to mere push-ups? Anduin's cold gaze swept over the other students. It seems ordinary punishment no longer affects you. Anduin walked down the steps slowly. All second, third, and fourth graders, stand up, he commanded. The called grades obeyed, though their faces showed confusion. Facing a few who repeatedly violate discipline, why don't you help them? Have you already given up on them? Anduin's gaze was stern as he looked across the crowd. End of this chapter. Chapter 284. Sitting in a row. At this moment, the three students who had violated the rules wore the most terrified expressions. They couldn't comprehend why Anduin was directing his anger at other students in the same grade, even though they were the ones who had made the mistake. The second, third, and fourth grade students who also stood up were trembling as Anduin roared, unsure of what mistake they had made. Continuous violations of discipline have already caused the three of you to lose your sense of shame and collective honor, Anduin said, glancing at the three offenders and then at their peers. What makes me even more disappointed is that you all knew they had many bad habits they couldn't get rid of, yet you didn't help them in time. Slytherin is no longer a house that only cares about itself. What is the last of the three principles of Slytherin? Tell me aloud. Anduin's expression was cold, his eyes devoid of emotion as he stared at everyone. It's a correct attitude, solidarity, friendship, and mutual respect, Ibrahimovic quickly responded, taking the lead in answering. Louder! Anduin suddenly roared angrily. Correct attitude, solidarity, friendship, and mutual respect, the three grades, including the three rule-breaking students, shouted in unison. Do you see the correct attitude in the three of them? Do you see the respect? And you, I didn't notice any shadow of unity and friendship at all, Anduin said fiercely, glancing at the standing crowd. He then turned his head to look at the three trembling students. I know, you have violated many rules and been punished too much, so you don't feel it anymore? Anduin slowly walked to the side of the three, his voice low and cold. No, we just weren't careful, the third grader, Hatter Chris, replied, trembling all over from Anduin's current state. It doesn't matter. I will teach you what unity, respect, and attitude are, Anduin said, his sharp eyes piercing through them. After addressing the three, Anduin turned back to the stone platform and glanced at everyone coldly. It seems that a single punishment can no longer make people learn to be in awe. So from now on, we will implement a continuous sitting system for violations of discipline. The students who stood up didn't understand what Anduin meant and looked at each other in panic. Anduin, sensing their confusion, explained in a low and gentle voice. If a person violates discipline for the first time, they will be punished with 50 push-ups. If a person violates discipline twice, it means that your entire grade has failed to help them, so the whole grade will be punished. If someone violates discipline 3 times, I will consider that you, as boys or girls, have given up on them. I cannot tolerate this behavior, so if the same gender sits together and it exceeds 3 times, the whole school will sit together to help correct it. After listening to Anduin's explanation, all the students who stood up felt a chill in their hearts. What did this mean? If one person made a mistake, the entire grade would be punished? The 3 students who had violated the rules now felt their legs go weak. When they turned to look at their classmates, it seemed that the eyes cast by their peers were full of malice. Would they be hated by everyone? What are you waiting for? All the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders, get ready for push-ups. If there's not enough space on the steps, find an open area on your own, Anduin ordered, his tone as firm as iron, without a trace of emotion. Everyone who heard the order could only disperse obediently at this time, and then Under Anduin's supervision, the third-grade wizards were made to do 50 push-ups without any leniency. Due to the large number of students being punished, the stone platform, the open space in front of the steps, and even the gaps between the tables were filled with people. Those young wizards who were not part of the punishment watched their classmates suffer up close, feeling very uncomfortable. Many of them had never violated discipline before, and there were also many girls among them. For these students, the standard 50 push-ups felt like a grueling ordeal. Halfway through, many began to howl in pain, trembling and sweating profusely. The sounds of their suffering reached the ears of those seated at the long table nearby, making them feel even more uneasy. Finally, the punishment that had everyone trembling came to an end. The little wizards who stood up again were drenched in sweat and panting heavily. As for the 3 young wizards who frequently violated discipline, they had gradually become accustomed to this kind of physical punishment, receiving it almost weekly. However, the psychological pressure weighed heavily on them. The punishment for violating discipline is over. Remember the lesson from this time. If you commit another offense, the punishment will be more severe. It is also your responsibility to help your companions abide by the rules, Anduin announced calmly, his gaze lingering on everyone. The punished students felt a sense of relief, though their thoughts about the 3 violators remained unknown. But just as they began to relax, Anduin dropped another bombshell. Although the daily discipline has been reported, there were still violations during the exam. I regret to inform you that someone was caught cheating in this month's exam. The common room erupted in shock. Cheating in an exam that determined grade honors? It was unthinkable. Haddle, the culprit, suddenly froze, feeling a chill run down his spine. When he looked up at the stone platform, he saw Anduin staring at him intently. His heart sank, realizing he had been caught. "Hatter Chris, do you have anything to say? Perhaps you would like to make an excuse," Anduin said coldly, his eyes devoid of emotion. Everyone around turned to look at Hader in surprise, including his classmates and Ibrahimovic, who stared at him in disbelief. Hader trembled as he stood up. "I'm sorry, Chief. I plead guilty. I was just too scared. I'm not good in many subjects, and I was afraid of dragging down my grades." "So you think it's acceptable to trample on the honor of the academy and disrespect the hard work of others?" Anduin's eyes bore into him, making Hader tremble even more. "I'm sorry, Chief. I have shamed the students in the 3rd grade. If you want to punish someone, punish me alone," Hader said, his voice shaking. He had been terrified by Anduin's methods before, and now wanted to take the blame alone, fearing further disgrace in the academy. End of this chapter. Chapter 285. You Count. It's not cowardice to take responsibility for your actions, but do you think you can break the rules I've established with just one word? Anduin's voice was devoid of emotion as he looked at Hader. Your cheating has allowed you to obtain grades that do not reflect your true abilities. Now, your personal grades are all nullified. Do you accept this? "I accept," Hader replied, his face pale. This public humiliation was worse than death, but he couldn't argue. "And because of your actions, the entire 3rd grade has benefited unfairly. I will clear all the grades and honors of the 3rd grade, including your 1st grade achievements and honors, as well as those of your grade leader, Ibrahimovic. Are you convinced, Hatter? Ibrahimovic, do you have any objections?" Anduin continued, his expression unchanging. Hader felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His face was filled with fear and unease as he glanced at his colleagues and Ibrahimovic. All the 3rd grade wizards turned their heads to look at Hader, their eyes filled with anger and resentment. Was all the honor they had worked so hard for now wasted? Hader finally understood why Anduin had waited to expose his cheating. The feeling of gain and loss was now fully integrated into the eyes of the 3rd-year students. Every stare made him feel more uncomfortable and self-blaming. "I accept the arrangement, Chief," Ibrahimovic said, glancing at Hatter. His eyes were not filled with hatred, but with determination. "It's my fault. I didn't pay attention to Hader when he needed help. I was blinded by awards and honors and only knew to keep adding pressure to everyone. Hader's actions are our collective responsibility. The 3rd grade is a team, and we are willing to share the responsibility for any mistakes," Ibrahimovic said, looking at his colleagues with a determined face. Ibrahimovic's clear eyes and unshirkable answers infected everyone in the third grade. When they looked at Hatter again, there was less resentment and more understanding and firmness. "I'm so sorry, Ibrahimovic," Hatter sobbed uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, take responsibility. Everyone wants Ibrahimovic and the third grade to succeed," Anduin nodded approvingly at Ibrahimovic. "However, discipline is discipline, and if you violate it, you will be punished. Boys from the Snake Academy, all rise." Following his order, all the boys in the academy stood up. "Hatter, you have already made a mistake once before. According to regulations, the punishment will be upgraded, and all the boys in the school will sit together. If you violate discipline again in the future, the whole school will bear it together." Anduin looked at Hatter coldly. "All boys, get ready for 50 push-ups." Seeing that Anduin was still enforcing the punishment so ruthlessly, everyone felt a chill. They knew the chief would not compromise on maintaining discipline, so they had to find an empty spot and get down. But it was hard for the boys in grades 2, 3, and 4. They had just done 50 push-ups earlier, and the soreness in their bodies hadn't gone away. Now they had to do it again? But the rules were cold-blooded and ruthless. As Anduin began to count, all the young wizards could only complete the movements with trembling bodies. In just a dozen strokes, the slowly dripping sweat had already formed pools of water stains under them, and the pain of muscle tearing with each push-up made them cry out in agony. "I'm a little tired from counting," Anduin said leisurely, watching the pain of everyone. Hearing his words, those being punished felt a glimmer of hope. Could it be that the chief thought they were too miserable and planned to forgive them? Anduin didn't continue counting, nor did he order them to get up. Instead, he paced slowly, walked over to Hatter, and squatted down beside him. "Hatter, you have a good physique, so such a childish punishment must not be a big deal to you," Anduin said with a grin. Hatter felt his heart tighten with anxiety. What did the chief mean by this? "Since this punishment is irrelevant to you, you can help me count the remaining numbers. It will save me some effort," Anduin continued. He pulled Hatter up. "I counted to 23. You start at 24. Chief, Hatter stammered, feeling a mix of nervousness and panic. It was his mistake. But now he had to execute the punishment for everyone? It felt like being thrown into the fire. As Hatter stood up, he felt the eyes of all the male wizards in the academy on him. Their gazes were filled with various emotions, but forgiveness was not one of them. "Hurry up, speak louder," Anduin shouted, seeing Hatter standing there, trembling. "Yes, Chief, 24, 25, 26. Hatter quickly counted in a trembling voice. The feeling of bearing the guilt and being executed in public was unbearable. He just wanted to end this nightmare quickly. Each push-up, each wail from the wizards felt like a red-hot iron branding him. "You're counting too fast, and your voice isn't loud enough. Do you need me to teach you how to count? Start again." Anduin scolded mercilessly, determined to make Hatter remember this day for the rest of his life. Yes, Hatter felt as if his whole body would break if touched lightly. He relied on sheer instinct to stay conscious. Under Anduin's personal supervision, Hatter counted again and again. After 10 repetitions, he couldn't bear it anymore and began to cry loudly. But under Anduin's scolding, he continued the punishment with a choked voice. Listening to Hatter's mournful cries, the wizards doing push-ups felt their resentment towards him dissipate. They gradually realized how uncomfortable Hatter was, tormented by guilt and fear. Instead of anger, they began to feel pity for him. And above all, they felt a growing fear of Anduin, who had almost driven Hatter to madness. End of this chapter. Chapter 286, The Green-Haired Girl. After enduring this seemingly endless punishment, each of the young wizards was as exhausted as a dead dog. Although Hatter himself did not complete all the punishments, he appeared to be in a daze. He stood blankly in the crowd until his third-year companions carried him back to his seat. With the punishment concluded, Anduin took the opportunity to announce the end of the monthly regular meeting. All the rewards previously given to the third grade were retracted and awarded to the fourth grade, with the top 3 individuals now led by the fourth grade leader, Joey. However, in Slytherin, no one was celebrating. Instead, there was a collective sense of relief, as if a great burden had finally been lifted. Every minute of that monthly meeting had felt like an eternity. After witnessing Hader's ordeal, the young wizards didn't dare to take any chances. From the very next day, they seemed to revert to their first days at school, living each day in fear. Among them, Hader had changed the most. He transformed from a slick, carefree kid into a diligent student. Every day, whether during self-study or daily activities, he pushed himself to the limit, almost as if he were punishing himself. He was the first to rise each morning, maintained the strictest discipline, and was the last to finish his studies, as if he had become a completely different person. At the same time, the young wizards in the academy began to show more concern for their classmates. They supervised each other daily to ensure no one violated the rules. They would wake each other up early in the morning, and if someone made too much noise during dinner, they would be immediately reminded. This sense of responsibility extended beyond their own grade. Students from different grades would help and supervise each other, as long as they were from the same house. After all, it wasn't just the individual who would suffer for breaking the rules. The entire house would face the consequences. This fostered a sense of unity and camaraderie within Slytherin, albeit a somewhat forced one. But they had no choice but to unite. If they didn't, their head would ensure they did. Hader's transformation into a model of morality was a stark reminder of what could happen. In this state of heightened vigilance, their daily lives and studies gradually evolved into a routine. Many of the disciplines Anduin had imposed were not unreasonable. They were mostly about housework and etiquette. The problem was that the students had become too lazy and had deviated too far from a disciplined lifestyle, making it hard for them to adapt quickly. However, after Anduin's strict enforcement, the young wizards gradually got used to a self-disciplined life. Surprisingly, they began to enjoy it. Dressing neatly and walking in an orderly manner every day created a stark contrast with others. Initially, students from other houses mocked the Slytherins for their prudishness, but after a month or two, the Slytherins had genuinely become more refined. Soon, students from other houses noticed the growing gap between themselves and the Slytherins, not just in grades but in daily behavior as well. At meals, there was always a group of Slytherins who ate quietly and politely. When walking, they moved in orderly lines. This comparison made students from other houses feel rude and disrespectful, like commoners next to aristocratic gentlemen. It even instilled a slight sense of inferiority in some. Slytherin's persistence unexpectedly influenced many students from other houses. 2 months into the term, many professors noticed subtle changes among the students. They dressed more appropriately, and there was less noise during meals. The transformation was remarkable. The little wizards had all become more polite, which even made the administrator Filch feel uncomfortable. After all, these students were usually quite mischievous, and their sudden calmness made it seem like something was missing. The Slytherin students also noticed this change. Unlike others, they were Slytherins, so this kind of self-disciplined life made them feel extremely proud. However, not everyone was pleased with the changes in Slytherin House. Hogg soon found himself out of a job, as he hadn't caught a student violating discipline in a long time. But Anduin didn't have time to worry about Hogg's employment status. He was currently dealing with a sorceress. Outside Hagrid's hut, Anduin was stroking a cat while overseeing the training of the top 3 students from the past 2 months. He had sent Ibrahimovic and Bill to help test samples of tactical equipment. Recently, he had made several product improvements for his alchemy business, mainly to reduce costs by creating some low-end props. He now wanted to test the functional limits and durability of these items. The research and development of the magic lathe were progressing smoothly, and it was expected that a trial version would be produced within the year. If the lathe could be completed ahead of schedule, his alchemy workshop might open next year, making product testing imperative. Standing beside Anduin was a young female wizard with fluffy green hair, sitting carelessly on the fence of the hut and swinging her short legs. "So, what are you going to do? You seem to be a prefect of Slytherin. Why did you suddenly ask Charlie to find me, a little wizard from Hufflepuff?" the girl asked unceremoniously, looking at the handsome man holding a kitty. Tonks, why do you have to make your hair green? It doesn't look good, Anduin said, staring at her green hair with some discomfort. As for why I asked you here, I need your help with something, and it could be beneficial for you as well. This young wizard was Tonks, who had impressed Anduin deeply at the beginning of the school year. He was very interested in her metamorph magus abilities, which allowed her to change her appearance at will. Charlie, who had been brought into the training by Bill, had helped Anduin arrange this meeting to see if he could study Tonks's abilities. I can become whatever I like. Do you care? Tonks rolled her eyes at Anduin. I'm not interested in you Slytherins. It was your house that got my mother kicked out of the family. It's the Black family who have a grudge against you. You can't hate the entire house just because they were born in Slytherin, can you? Besides, I'm good friends with the prefect of your house, Merlin Macmillan, Anduin said, trying to persuade her with a smile. End of this chapter. Chapter 287, The Stubborn Tonks. What does that have to do with me? Just like the Black family and the Lestrange family, you Slytherins are all the same. I still remember how my mother used to be insulted by her sister Bella, and how my father was despised. They're Muggle-born wizards, and don't you guys look down on Muggle-related wizards the most? Tonks spoke bluntly, her disdain for pure-blood families evident. Then you should thank me. I sent the Lestrange family to Azkaban. And don't you know, I am a Muggle-born wizard. Your prejudice is no different from that of many pure-blood wizards, Anduin replied with a light smile, boasting for the first time about his achievement. Is what you said true? Tonks looked at him suspiciously, then curled her lips. Then why is your academy so different? Everyone acts as serious as high-ranking nobles. It's uncomfortable. They weren't like this a year ago. I don't think self-discipline and courtesy represent nobility. I just asked them to treat themselves according to a standard, Anduin said, squeezing the cat in his hand and smiling slightly. You mean, you made them like this? Tonks turned her head to glance at the people training nearby, wondering why they maintained such strange postures. I don't believe it. Why do they listen to you? Because they have no choice, Anduin chuckled, then followed Tonks's gaze to the few people standing on the stakes. He made a beep and blew his whistle loudly. The people who heard the signal quickly put away their stances, ignoring the soreness in their bodies, and rushed to Anduin in a line. Chief! The 6 people, led by Jane, stood in a row. Although their faces were covered in sweat and they were panting, they still stood upright and bowed their heads respectfully to Anduin. Let's stop here for today's stance training. Remember to continue training before bed tonight. Now, aim for Hogwarts Castle and run forward. Anduin ordered sternly. Yes, Chief. There was a hint of relief in their eyes. After responding energetically, they turned and ran towards the castle in an orderly manner. Tonks couldn't help but believe Anduin's words when she saw how obedient the Slytherin students were under his command. Let's go. It's almost time for dinner. I'll treat you. Let's talk while we eat, Anduin said, walking towards the hut with the cat in his arms. Tonks perked up at the mention of food. With a big jump, she leaped off the railing with great agility and followed Anduin enthusiastically. When they reached the house, she saw an outdoor kitchen with a wooden shed against the wall. The most striking feature was a masonry earthen stove with a large iron pot and a stone operating table next to it. There was a large log cutting board and various bottles and jars she hadn't seen before. Beyond the outdoor kitchen, there was a stone-stacked, long barbecue table with a clean iron mesh, though faint charred lines from frequent use were still visible. Can you cook? If you can, come over and help, Anduin pointed to the barbecue station. I'm a Hufflepuff. Don't underestimate me. I'm definitely better than a big guy like you, Tonks said with a displeased expression, her hair turning fiery red. Anduin smiled noncommittally, then raised his chin and pointed at the stove. That's good. Today we'll have charcoal grilled pork chops. First, help me boil the water, and I'll handle the pork chops. With that, Anduin took out a large piece of Tebow Warthog pork chop from his space ring and threw it on the stove with a bang. Tonks's eyes widened at the sight of such a large piece of pork chop, but she still looked at Anduin with curiosity. Tonks asked with some doubts, "What are you doing with the boiling water? Wouldn't it be enough to marinate and roast it?" Cooking it thoroughly before roasting makes the meat softer and more tender, Anduin explained casually. He then took out his wand to direct the kitchen utensils and seasonings, starting to work on his own while explaining to her. First, prick the ribs on both sides to allow the flavors to penetrate. Then sprinkle with salt, black pepper, pesto, and oregano powder, spreading it evenly on both sides. Simmer with onion, garlic cloves, bay leaf, and fresh thyme for 30 minutes. Finally, stir roast on high heat. This method ensures both the texture and flavor are unexpectedly good. Anduin used a cutting spell to divide the large rib into several parts and was about to make incisions when he noticed Tonks staring at him blankly, swallowing her saliva. "Why are you still standing there? Light a fire to boil the water," he prompted. "Oh." Tonks was so engrossed in Anduin's description that she momentarily forgot to act. "From what you said, you seem very familiar with cooking. Do you often cook?" she asked curiously while helping. "Recently, I haven't had much time to cook myself, but I am quite picky about food. I also set up the kitchen here. If you're interested in cooking, you can borrow it whenever you like. Just let Hagrid know," Anduin said distractedly while skillfully handling the steak. Tonks curled her lips noncommittally. "This guy must be trying to impress me with his cooking skills. I wonder what kind of help he wants from me, but he is so considerate," she thought. "By the way, what exactly do you want me to do for you? For the sake of this delicious food, if it's not too difficult, I don't mind helping," Tonks said, trying to gauge his intentions. "Actually, I don't need you to do anything specific. I'm just curious about your Metamorph Magus ability and want to research and develop this special talent with you," Anduin replied with a smile, seeing that Tonks was letting her guard down. "Metamorph Magus? This is my innate magical talent. Even I don't fully understand it. It's like how some people are naturally good at the levitation spell. Can this really be studied?" Tonks asked, slightly puzzled. "I am one of those people who are naturally good at the levitation spell," Anduin thought to himself. "It's because you don't have a deep understanding of the essence of magic. Many natural magical talents can be analyzed and understood," he explained. "What do you want to do?" Tonks asked, still confused. "Let's start by drawing some blood. Then we can figure out the flow and mechanism of your magic power to see if it's a physical trait or a special form of blood magic," Anduin said casually. End of this chapter. Chapter 288, Magic Amplification. When Anduin finished speaking and looked at Tonks again, she had already sneaked 7 or 8 meters away. At this moment, she looked at Anduin with eyes full of suspicion and fear. "You really are a pervert. You tricked me here, and now you want to draw my blood. Are you planning to use me for some dark magic experiments?" Tonks eyed Anduin warily, her wand now pointed at him nervously. In her eyes, Anduin had transformed from a gourmet wizard to an evil dark wizard. Seeing this, Anduin couldn't help but laugh. The girl must have misunderstood the blood drawing. In the wizarding world, anything involving blood often conjures images of dark wizards. "You may have misunderstood. The blood I mentioned is just to measure your mana value. This is a special method I developed. You don't have to be so nervous," Anduin said softly, trying to comfort her. "I don't believe you," Tonks replied, shaking her head warily. Her hair instantly turned blue, reflecting her feelings. Anduin shook his head helplessly. The commotion had attracted the attention of the others practicing nearby. Seeing Anduin in the kitchen, they assumed there was something delicious and immediately ended their training to gather around. "Brother Anduin, what delicious food are you making today?" Bill asked eagerly as he approached. He noticed Tonks standing not far away. "Huh, aren't you that Hufflepuff student who can transform at will? What, you came here to eat and drink too?" "Eat and drink? Aren't you afraid of the dark wizard standing next to you?" Tonks asked cautiously, puzzled by why these Gryffindors were hanging out with a Slytherin. "Dark wizard? You mean Brother Anduin?" Bill and Charles laughed at her words. "Are you kidding? He's a combat hero recognized by the Ministry of Magic. He once captured and killed several Death Eaters on his own. He's the nemesis of dark wizards." "Then why does he draw human blood every now and then? Don't you know?" Tonks asked, still skeptical. She had never paid much attention to the news of the wizarding world and had missed Anduin's exploits. "Blood drawing?" Charles raised an eyebrow and looked at Anduin. Are you planning to train her too? Is she special? Why do you value her so much? Her ability is very special. I want to see if I can help her develop this transformation ability. Maybe she can uncover the mysteries of Transfiguration Magus, Anduin explained with a smile. Tonks noticed that none of them seemed alarmed by the mention of blood drawing and felt puzzled. What are you talking about? Didn't you hear that he wanted to draw blood? Only dark wizards do such wicked things. You may have misunderstood, Tonks, Charlie, who had brought her over, said as he joined the group. Brother Anduin just draws blood to measure your magic power reserves. We've all had our blood drawn. Do you know my initial mana value is over 100 quarters? Brother Anduin praised me as a genius. As a first-year student, Charlie was fairly familiar with Tonks. Seeing him speak so confidently, Tonks hesitated. Could she have misunderstood? These Gryffindors didn't seem to be lying. Tonks struggled for a moment before slowly lowering her wand. Then how do you prove it? She asked, still keeping her distance. It's just an on-site test, Charlie said, putting his hands behind his head nonchalantly. With a smile, Bill and Charlie personally demonstrated the magic power measuring instrument to Tonks. Tonks was dumbfounded as she measured their current magic power on the spot. Bill registered at 276 ticks, while Charlie showed 106 ticks. Does this number represent the magic power contained in your body? Tonks asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. That's right, Bill confirmed. I remember that I was only at 143 ticks when I started school last year, and I've grown so much in just 1 year. No wonder Brother Anduin said that after the 3rd grade, the magic power of wizards will greatly improve. He pointed to the disc, marveling at the numerical value. Yes, Brother Anduin mentioned that the magic power of freshmen who just enter the school is about 50 to 80 ticks. When I started school, I could exceed that range, which proves that my magic power is very high. Similarly, my brother Bill is also very powerful. At the same time, Charlie's magic power was still high, Charlie added, stepping aside to show off. That's because Bill started his training a year earlier than I did, Charlie explained, sitting down by the baking table with a large pot full of cooked ribs. Anduin's training method can steadily increase the upper limit of mana. Of course, the most obvious improvement is in magic sensitivity. Those who received Anduin's training privately named it Anne's training method, and Anduin did not specifically object to this. In addition to training, the growth of magic power has a lot to do with nutrition. Anduin, who had also come over, said as he sat down slowly. He then lit a fire on the grill with a blazing flame. The growth rate of the magic power of juvenile wizards is very fast. Generally, it is about 50 to 80 ticks when they enter school, and the natural increase is about 50 ticks in the 2nd grade. If they are trained deliberately, the increase can reach 60 to 70 ticks. Anduin continued while placing meat steaks on the grill. A larger span of growth will occur around the age of 12 to 13. The growth rate varies greatly from person to person, generally between 50 to 100 ticks. With training, it can be stable at more than 100 ticks. Bill's increase reaching 130 ticks shows he has great potential. This increase in magic power is crucial to the growth of wizards, but without guidance, it can also pose a danger. That's why wizards choose to send children to Hogwarts during this period of magic power growth. I heard from Professor Flitwick that large wizarding schools have special protective magic to prevent wizards from being harmed by their own magic power or becoming silent. Since the invention of the wand, guiding magic power has become easier for wizards. Afterwards, young wizards will maintain a trend of increasing by 50 to 100 ticks until they are 15 years old, which is the 5th grade, and then it will begin to slow down. When they are 16 or 17 years old, the growth rate will return to about 50 ticks. So by the time they graduate, a wizard's magic power value is roughly between 350 to 600 ticks. The difference is quite large, with the average graduate having about 400 to 500 ticks. End of this chapter. Chapter 289, Natural Magic. After graduation, a wizard's physique and magic power will gradually increase with age, but the rate is not very high. I estimate that the annual growth rate will decrease with age. If magic is rarely used, or if malnutrition occurs, The mana value may even be reduced, Anduin explained as he flipped the barbecue, sharing his knowledge with everyone. It's easy to say, but it actually has a lot to do with each wizard's individual physique. The difference between two wizards can sometimes be very significant, he continued. So, the higher the magic power, the stronger the wizard? Tonks asked, his attention divided between Anduin's explanation and the sizzling grilled pork chops. That's not necessarily the case. Strength is not completely equated with the amount of magic power. In fact, most people will have enough magic power in their lifetime, regardless of the amount, Anduin replied. Some wizards are born with a good physique. Although their magical starting point and growth rate are very high, it is useless if they neglect to study, are weak in spirit, or are not good at using spells. On the other hand, some wizards have low magic power, but if they are diligent in practicing spells and have a firm will, their strength should not be underestimated. Take Professor Flitwick in the Charm class, for example. Due to his race, his magic power is below that of an average adult wizard. However, relying on his superb skills, he became the champion of the duel competition. Anduin then turned his attention to Charlie. Charlie, your physique and talent are very good. I think this is due to your mother's careful care. But if you become complacent and neglect to practice, your potential might as well be nothing. Understand? I see, Brother Anduin, Charlie responded, sitting up straight and nodding in agreement. Tonks, seeing the logic in Anduin's words and the respect everyone had for him, realized she had wrongly blamed him before. However, she still looked at Anduin curiously. You said before that you needed to draw my blood to study my ability. What does my transformation talent have to do with magic power? This has to be tested to know. If this talent is something you awakened, then it also needs to be driven by magic power. If you use magic power frequently, you will exercise your magic power activity, and your magic power will increase slowly with frequent use when you are young. Maybe the increase is not as large as when you were in school, but over the years, your magic power should be different from ordinary people, Anduin explained with a smile. You know all of this? Tonks asked, astonished. Even knowing the trend of magic power increase before entering school? Are you a genius? Anduin thought to himself, because I am like this. He had begun to practice deliberately when his magic power exploded in his youth, and as a result, his magic power far exceeded that of his peers. However, he didn't intend to explain this to Tonks. Instead, he continued, if your mana is about the same as that of ordinary wizards, then it means that your disguise magus is actually an instinct or some kind of mutation. Just like some people are born with white hair and three-headed dogs are born with 3 heads, it means that this ability is unique to you and cannot be copied. It is difficult to improve it with external force. So there is such a difference? If my ability to transform into a magus really increases my magic power, it means that there is still room for improvement in this ability. Tonks felt a surge of excitement at the thought. The specifics still need to be tested, but in theory, does your transfiguration magus have other abilities besides transformation? Anduin asked, intrigued. Can you change the color of your hair? For example, the length of your hair or other changes in appearance? Anduin asked, looking at the person with bright yellow hair. Well, besides changing the color of my hair, I can also alter the shape of my nose and mouth. However, I can't change the length of my hair, Tonks replied. She then demonstrated her abilities, showing her nose and mouth slowly transforming, her nose becoming either high or sunken, and her lips thick or thin. It seems your transfiguration abilities still have room to grow. You might be able to change more parts of your appearance in the future, Anduin nodded thoughtfully. By the way, since you often change your appearance, do you ever worry about forgetting your true face? Tonks shook her head. No, it's like a switch for me. As long as I turn it off, I immediately revert to my original shape. Only the hair color takes some time to fade. Anduin's eyes lit up at her explanation. It sounds like an ability driven by magic power. Maybe the switch you mentioned is the key. It could be a unique shape-shifting magic pattern or some kind of mutated bloodline magic. Really? I've always used it based on my mood and never thought much about it, Tonks said, suddenly intrigued by her shape-shifting ability. Let's test it then. Anduin nodded and motioned for Bill to test Tonks with a magic meter. After a short while, they saw that Tonks's current mana value was as high as 124 ticks, about double that of a normal first-year wizard. "Wow, you're almost catching up with my second-year mana," Bill exclaimed, surprised by the value. "This proves my guess. Your transfiguration abilities are likely a form of natural magic that you've instinctively used," Anduin said, nodding in satisfaction. "How should I train this ability? Is it enough to change shape often?" Tonks asked, delighted to discover her high magic power. "Using it often will definitely increase your proficiency, but it's not the most efficient method. You can't change your face all the time," Anduin explained. "The next step is to find the source of this special magic. If there's a magic pattern in your body, mastering it will help you improve quickly." "How do we find the source?" Tonks asked eagerly. "The easiest way is to perceive it yourself. You know your own body best. However, as a low-level wizard, your sensitivity to magic power is too low. It's difficult to perceive the magic outside your body, let alone within it," Anduin said, shaking his head. End of this chapter. Chapter 290, A Two-Pronged Approach. Seeing Anduin's calm expression, Tonks knew he must have a solution. "Then what should we do?" she asked. "My idea is a two-pronged approach," Anduin began. "Recently, I have been developing a highly penetrating observational alchemy item. If it can be perfected, I can directly study the direction of your magic power from outside your body and trace it back to its source." "And the other way?" Tonks inquired, eager to understand the full plan. "The other way depends on you. If your magic perception is low, you need to find a way to improve it. You can receive training from me to enhance your magic sensitivity. With your talent, the progress should not be very slow. Once your perception is strong enough, you can sense the source of your transformation." This had been Anduin's plan from the beginning, to train Tonks and let her help him uncover the secret of the disguise magus. If successful, it would be far superior to Polyjuice Potion, and he wouldn't have to worry about revealing potions or similar complications. "So, you will teach me how to control this ability?" Tonks asked, still trying to grasp Anduin's words fully. "Yes," Anduin confirmed. "Disguise magus should be related to transfiguration. In addition to training your magic perception, strengthening your transfiguration skills should also be helpful. But I hope you can share your knowledge with me once you have fully mastered this magic. I'm very interested in new magic." Tonks quickly agreed. "No problem. As my teacher, if I can truly master this ability, I won't be stingy with sharing it." Anduin nodded with satisfaction and then turned to Bill. "Let's start with the basic training for Tonks alongside Charlie. You will supervise them, and I will teach her transfiguration separately." After reaching a consensus with Anduin, Tonks felt much better. She and the others then enjoyed delicious grilled pork chops beside the hut. In the following days, Tonks would come to the Forbidden Forest hut every day after class to train with Bill. Anduin would spend 1 or 2 days a week teaching her transfiguration. Under Anduin's guidance, Tonks improved rapidly in both her personal qualities and her transfiguration skills, thanks in part to her own powerful talent. Over time, Anduin collected more information and data on the disguise magus. Frequent use of this transformation magic consumed mana, but less so than conversion spells and transformation spells. As her magic power sensitivity and transformation level improved, Tonks could transform more parts of her body. Initially, she could change the color of her pupils, the size of her eye sockets and eyelids. Later, she could alter her ears, cheeks, cheekbones, and even her teeth. Eventually, she could completely change her face. By the end of her 5th school year, Tonks often used Anduin's face to scare the Slytherin students, which made her realize just how much they feared him. Despite the obvious difference in height, as long as she wore Anduin's face, all the Slytherin students would stand at attention and salute when they saw her. If Anduin hadn't discovered her antics and reprimanded her several times, she would have continued to enjoy the prank. However, after long-term research and feedback from Tonks' self-perception, Anduin discovered that disguise magus was more akin to blood magic. This meant that this special magic might not have runes. The biggest difference between bloodline magic and other types of magic is that it typically lacks runes and is difficult to form into spells, making it unlearnable. Most blood magic in the wizarding world is inherited, passed down through generations. Magic is more pronounced in magical animals. Throughout the long history of wizards, research on blood magic has primarily focused on using blood or body tissue as mediums for curses, black magic, or in potions, blood encryption, and enhancing blood magic abilities. However, very few wizards have successfully replicated this magic through learning. Currently, there are only 2 known methods to actively master blood magic. The first method is the blood contract. By signing this contract with a magical animal or intelligent creature, there is a chance to master a related blood magic. For instance, Anduin suspects that Dumbledore has made a blood contract with his phoenix. However, this method creates a very close bond between the 2 parties. Anduin, who only wants to study disguise magic, finds it unnecessary to form a blood contract with Tonks, and she may not be willing either. The second method is one Anduin discovered in the Travers family magic book. He opened the metal-bound book and examined a technique called blood forging, falling into deep contemplation. The ancestors of the Travers family were undoubtedly geniuses, especially in black magic and curses, though their methods were often cruel. Blood forging allows one to replicate certain bloodline magics or characteristics inherited from magical animals or wizards. The process involves extracting the blood and fur of the target, mixing them with your own blood and fur, and adding mandrake, airship plum fruit, poisonous tentacle twigs, sapgrass picked at the full moon, and bicorn horn powder. These ingredients are mixed in a crystal vial, ensuring all materials are soaked in the combined blood. The vial is then left in a dark place for 7 days without being disturbed. After this period, the liquid in the vial will turn colorless and transparent. This liquid is highly volatile and will evaporate within minutes of opening the bottle, so the subsequent steps must be performed quickly and efficiently. Once the liquid is obtained, it is used to draw a blood vessel-forming magic circle, as described in the magic book. During the drawing, you must input your own magic power to maintain the shape, with the preferred carrier being Cortex. After the magic circle is drawn, use the Imperious Curse or Confusion Curse to compel the target to use the bloodline ability you wish to acquire. While the target uses this ability, bleed them so that the magic circle is covered with their magical blood. When the magic circle is fully covered and the magic flow within it can be clearly sensed, the ritual is complete. The lines of the magic circle will then become hidden, allowing the person who added their blood to use the corresponding blood magic. In addition to copying the corresponding blood magic, this ritual can also replicate some physical characteristics of magical creatures, such as physical strength. End of this chapter. Chapter 291, The Test. At first glance, the description of the ceremony might seem unremarkable. However, when Anduin examined the case of the Travers ancestor who had undergone this blood ritual, he felt the true malevolence of this magic. Ancestor Travers had used the blood ritual more like a tattoo, drawing the magic circle directly onto his body. The most successful case involved a wizard named Sigurd from the family. Sigurd once captured a Norwegian ridgeback dragon and used a large amount of its blood, along with his own, to draw blood veins all over his body, forming a magic circle. After completing the circle, he used the Imperious Curse to control the dragon, forcing it to tighten its skin and release its blood, bathing himself in it. The Norwegian ridgeback eventually died from blood loss, but Sigurd gained a powerful defense comparable to that of a dragon. Of course, Sigurd's story ended dramatically. After acquiring his dragon-like defense, he went mad and began plundering resources with his newfound power. This led him to a confrontation with Godric Gryffindor, one of the founders of Hogwarts. Gryffindor, who despised evil and loved duels, challenged Sigurd after witnessing his atrocities. According to the records, the first duel between Gryffindor and Sigurd ended in a draw. Sigurd's strong defense made it difficult for Gryffindor to break through, but Sigurd couldn't defeat Gryffindor either. Both retreated temporarily and agreed to a second duel. During the interim, Gryffindor discovered Sigurd's weakness. A leaf had stuck to Sigurd's shoulder during the blood ritual, becoming his only vulnerability. In their second duel, Gryffindor exploited this weakness and killed Sigurd. From then on, Gryffindor's sword was said to possess the sharpness to pierce dragon skin easily. To Anduin, this record seemed somewhat fantastical, reminiscent of Norse mythology. It was unclear who had copied whom. Regardless of the story's veracity, the bloodline refining ceremony appeared quite powerful, albeit with an exaggerated amount of bloodletting. According to the records, completing the 2 steps of this ritual required a significant amount of blood from the target. If Tonks were to undergo this ritual, she would likely not survive the first step. It seems we need to experiment with other materials first. This magic circle is ancient. Perhaps there's room for improvement. We also need to test the required blood proficiency, Anduin mused as he closed the magic book. He decided to first try the ritual on a magical animal. He focused on a Tebow warthog in the park. The Tebow warthog's skin was very tough, and Anduin planned to perform the blood-refining ceremony on a piece of ordinary cowhide to see if he could make it as tough as Tebow warthog's skin. The Tebow warthog had a good physique, plenty of blood, and was durable for experiments. Even if it died accidentally, it could still be used as food. With a plan in mind, Anduin gathered all the necessary materials. He found a strong Tebow warthog, drew its blood, and shaved it. He then took a few drops of his own blood and hair, mixed all the materials into a crystal bottle, and stored it. After a week, Anduin retrieved the bottle of mixed liquid and found that it had indeed become transparent, just as the records described, resembling plain water. However, during the process of drawing the magic circle, something went wrong. The potion's volatilization speed was even more exaggerated than the records indicated. Anduin had just started drawing when he noticed that only half of the potion remained in the crystal bottle. Anduin sealed the bottle cap tightly. No wonder the first step consumes so much blood. With this rate of evaporation, at least 20 times the standard amount of blood is needed to complete the magic circle. I need to come up with a solution, he thought, contemplating the situation. After some consideration, Anduin devised a plan. He decided to create a device that could connect to the crystal bottle, effectively linking the engraving pen the bottle cap. By attaching the bottle cap to the crystal bottle and turning it upside down, he could use the potion directly with the engraving pen, similar to how an ink bottle is used with a pen. This would significantly reduce the waste of the potion. For an alchemist like Anduin, this task was relatively straightforward. After spending some time on it, he successfully created the device. When he tested it, he found that although the potion still evaporated, the waste was greatly minimized. The only downside was that the device was a bit heavy, but it was manageable. After drawing the magic circle on the cowhide, Anduin didn't immediately wash it with pig's blood. Instead, he took out 2 alchemical tools. One resembled a metal microscope, complete with a mirror base, mirror arm, lens barrel, and stage, similar to a regular microscope. However, unlike a normal microscope, the stage had a flat metal carrier plate instead of a clear light hole. The other tool was a magnifying glass, with a round lens connected to a handle. These 2 alchemical tools were observation devices that Anduin had recently developed. They were essentially the same type of equipment, but differed in strength. The magnifying glass had good penetrability and could observe the flow of magic power inside other alchemical tools. It could also reveal spells that were subtly engraved into alchemical materials. This would allow Anduin to openly observe the spells in products when visiting alchemical prop stores. The microscope-like observer was even more effective. It could penetrate the bodies of magical creatures to observe the flow of magic power within them. Unfortunately, it could only observe and not measure the magic power. Otherwise, it could have replaced the blood-drawing magic power measuring instrument. Anduin had previously used it to observe Tonks, which led him to conclude that Tonks's disguise magus was a form of blood magic. Anduin first observed the magic circle with the magnifying glass. From the lines and the flow of magic power, he identified the core parts of the magic circle. Then, he went to the magical zoo area of the Forbidden Forest and controlled a Tebow warthog. He stimulated its skin to tighten with an electric current, then poured blood on the cowhide while continuously observing the changes in the magic circle with the magnifying glass. As the pig's blood completely covered the cowhide, which was the size of a wash basin, a magical reaction began. Anduin tightened the blood flow, and the magical reaction persisted. It seemed that the ritual did not require constant washing with blood. After helping the T-bow warthog stop the bleeding, Anduin continued to observe the magic circle's reaction until the lines on the cowhide completely disappeared and the cowhide's state changed entirely. End of this chapter. Chapter 292, Ritual Magic. After removing the bloodstains, the entire piece of cowhide began to show a rough, hard leather texture, very similar to that of a T-bow warthog. Following the method recorded in the magic book, Anduin held the cowhide and stimulated it with magic power. Soon, the cowhide returned to its original softness. When he input the magic power again, the cowhide became rough once more. The effect is obvious, but when the magic circle operates, the magic power in some individual lines of the formation doesn't run smoothly. This means the efficiency isn't fully optimized, Anduin noted. The amount of blood required for the ritual is related to the size of the circle and the material. Drawing the circle and running the ceremony shouldn't use so much blood. It's a waste to pour a large tube of blood on it. Next time, I'll try using a catheter to apply it and see the effect. Anduin observed the magic circle, summing up the results. After returning, he tried to optimize the magic circle. He modified more than a dozen designs of the circle at once, preparing for the second stage of testing. A month passed quietly, and just before the end of the 5th school year, Anduin finally experimented with the most concise and efficient array. This process consumed dozens of cowhides and an entire T-bow warthog. Anduin improved the blood transfusion process during the drawing of the magic circle and the ceremony, reducing blood waste. He could finally attempt to create his first blood alchemy prop using this method. On this day, Anduin went to the hut in the Forbidden Forest and placed a leather mask on the workbench. The mask was white overall, with small lines unique to animal skin visible on it. The eyes, nostrils, and mouth had corresponding gaps left. This mask was made from the skin of a moon-crazy beast. The moon-crazy beast has good magic affinity and is full of vitality. Their feces can make magic plants grow fast and strong. Anduin then took out a crystal vial from under the floor, containing the blood of Tonks that he had drawn a week ago. To get Tonks to cooperate in the production of this prop, he paid her with 2 real T-bow warthog hams and specially made a pair of magic boots from magical animal skins for her. He carefully opened the mouth of the crystal bottle and quickly put on a metal bottle cap. A soft rubber tube was connected to the bottle cap, guiding the liquid inside into the engraving pen in his hand. Anduin then began to concentrate on drawing the improved array diagram. He intended to make a transformation mask with the magic of the Transfiguration Magus bloodline. The main reason for choosing a small item was to avoid using too much blood, which could have adverse effects on Tonk's body. She was only 11 years old, and the total amount of blood used in the 2 procedures should not exceed 100 millimeters. Anduin painted the pattern on the mask very carefully. This kind of concave-convex carrier is different from a flat carrier, and any mistake could waste all his efforts. After he almost consumed all the liquid in the crystal bottle, the formation diagram was finally completed. After being inspected by the observer, it was confirmed that the magic formation on the mask was working well, and Anduin finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Tonks, come in," Anduin called out, pushing open the wooden door of the hut. "Coming, master. I feel really unlucky. Why do I always have to draw blood after meeting you?" A tall, straight girl with white hair jumped into the hut, mumbling with a dissatisfied expression. "It's not like I didn't give you enough compensation. I heard from Charlie that after you got those phase shoes, you went around showing them off. Why didn't you complain then?" Anduin retorted, giving her a blank stare. "Whatever." Tonks made a grimace at Anduin, then. Anduin jumped to the chair next to the console and sat down. "Master, is this broken mask the one you mentioned, the one that can reproduce the alchemy of Transformation Magus? Whether it will be successful or not is uncertain. This is my first time trying blood alchemy. Remember, when I draw your blood, you must keep changing your appearance and concentrate on transforming. Don't fail, or we'll have to try again," Anduin urged with a serious expression. "Oh my God, do I have to have my blood drawn again? I don't want to." Tonks protested, kicking her legs half coquettishly. "Stop talking nonsense and do as I say. Be serious. I've tried several times before, and there haven't been any problems. Just don't make mistakes in your environment," Anduin said, frowning slightly as he stared at Tonks. "Stretch out your hand." "Okay," Tonks pouted, but obediently stretched out her right hand. Anduin took out a needle and carefully aimed it at Tonks's arm. "It hurts! It hurts!" Tonks cried out in pain, closing her eyes nervously at the sight of the shiny, thick needle. "I haven't even inserted it yet. Why are you panicking?" Anduin sighed helplessly, then applied force with his hand. "All right, it's in. Quickly mobilize your magic power and use Disguise Magus." Although Tonks was very nervous, she knew this was a critical moment. She quickly and obediently stimulated her blood magic, causing her hair and face to change continuously. In an instant, the young girl transformed into a creature with colorful hair and a distorted face. The blood spread out along the rubber tube in Anduin's hand and gathered on a prop shaped like a child's watercolor pen. Anduin carefully applied the blood to the mask, ensuring a thin but even layer covered its surface. This small tool, specially made by Anduin, minimized blood waste. He had tested it before and found that in the second stage of the ritual magic link, as long as the blood covered the surface of the array, the thickness wasn't rigidly required. However, to ensure success, Anduin applied the blood 3 times until the lines of the magic circle were completely hidden. He then quickly put away the instrument and stopped Tonks's bleeding. "Huh? So fast? I thought it would take longer," Tonks said, feeling a bit surprised. "Every step costs blood. If you don't hurry, it's your blood," Anduin replied, relieved that Tonks was still mentally alert. "Is this prop complete now?" Tonks asked, staring at the red mask completely covered in blood. "Did it work? Hurry up and try it." "Yeah," Anduin said, equally curious about the blood alchemy item. He raised his hand, picked up the mask, and carefully put it on his face. End of this chapter. Chapter 293, Disguise Mask. The touch of the mask against Anduin's face was slightly cold, but it felt snug and soft. At the same time, he could sense a faint wrapping sensation, as if the mask itself had a life of its own. However, in Tonks' eyes, Anduin's current appearance was quite unsettling. The blood on the mask had not been wiped off, and the mask was so thin that it seemed to meld with his face, making him look like a bizarre, cheeky figure. Anduin decided to inject some magic into the mask. Almost immediately, the blood on its surface was absorbed into the epidermis, and the mask's color began to change. In an instant, it seemed to disappear, blending seamlessly with his skin. The edges of the mask fused perfectly with his face, leaving no visible gaps. Anduin felt a close connection with the mask, as if it were his original face, creating a harmonious feeling. Understanding the mask's function, Anduin's face began to morph like a lump of plasticine, twisting and melting slowly like a lit candle. Initially, the change was slow, as if he was still getting accustomed to its function. However, he didn't maintain this strange shape for long. About 10 seconds later, the melted wax on his face began to shrink, accelerating until his face returned to smoothness. Tonks watched in shock. Could she have looked this scary during her transformations? When Anduin finally finished changing, she saw a face that resembled her own, but was more mature and had better skin. It was clear that Anduin hadn't completely disguised himself as Tonks, but had made some modifications, resembling an older version of her. "Wow, Master, you're a pervert. You actually turned into a woman, and you're prettier than me," Tonks exclaimed, staring at the face that was very similar to hers but more mature. "No way," Anduin shook his head, exasperated. "You're the only reference I have in front of me, so naturally, I used you as an example." "Hey, Tonks teased, pouting, "but you're still a bit off. Your hair can't change and your breasts aren't as big as mine." She patted her chest and then rolled her eyes, thinking of something amusing. Her face began to change, and in the blink of an eye, Tonks turned into Anduin. However, she had modified some details, giving him a bit of baby fat. Anduin, now wearing the face of an adult Tonks, and Tonks wearing the face of a young Anduin, looked at each other, feeling a strange sense of discord. "Haha, now I'm your master. I can't believe how cute you were when you were young," Tonks said cheerfully, leaning over to the mirror in the room. She rubbed her fat face meanly, as if she were really rubbing Anduin's face. Seeing this, Anduin angrily approached and flicked her forehead, causing Tonks to yelp in pain. "Have you had enough fun? Help me test this mask." The second bottle in the cupboard is the visibility potion spray. Spray it on my face to see the effect. Anduin grabbed Tonks by the back of her collar and pointed her towards the cabinet. "Master, you really don't know how to have fun," Tonks muttered, rubbing her head and sticking out her tongue at Anduin mischievously. Nonetheless, she took out the potion obediently. Tonks sprayed the revealing potion on Anduin's face liberally. This potion could break the effects of Polyjuice Potion and Transfiguration, and was widely used in the wizarding world, such as in the deep vaults of Gringotts, where there was an anti-thief waterfall. The revealing potion flowed continuously. When Anduin's face was exposed to it, he didn't feel any strange sensations. Neither Tonks nor the mirror showed any changes. "It seems the effect has been achieved." Anduin nodded in satisfaction. The disguise mask that could ignore the revealing potion was truly a masterpiece of camouflage. "It's a pity it can't change your hair and body shape. Otherwise, you could pretend to be Professor Snape and give lessons to the other young wizards," Tonks joked, clearly bored. "It seems you don't like Professor Snape, but he's not a bad person," Anduin replied, changing his face back to its original form. The mask felt like an extra layer of skin, so he didn't bother taking it off. "Come on, you'll only say nice things about your headmaster," Tonks said, curling her lips. She then looked up at Anduin. "By the way, master, could you get me a monocle sometime? Imagine how handsome we'd look wearing them together." "Your spellcasting level is still too low. Let's talk about it when you learn the echo charm," Anduin said, wiping his glasses with a cloth before putting them back on. Tonks' talent for transfiguration had improved significantly under Anduin's guidance, but her spellcasting was still at the level of an ordinary young wizard. Learning the echo charm, which required no incantation and could only be used without a wand, was something she wouldn't be able to achieve until at least after her 5th year. Anduin and Tonks played with the disguise mask a bit more in the hut before returning to Hogwarts Castle before dark. They didn't stay in the Forbidden Forest Lodge for dinner because Hogwarts was about to enter the final exam period, and Slytherin House was in intense preparation mode. In the last monthly exam, before the end of the semester, Slytherin had achieved a 95% pass rate with scores above E. This result had everyone in the house excited, making their goals seem more attainable. Everyone was working hard, helping those whose grades were not up to standard. What concerned Anduin and the other members of the college committee even more was the 5th-year OWL exam. The number of subjects in which 5th-year students could obtain OWL certificates was crucial. According to the current monthly examination results, the 5th years had achieved grades above E, but the standards for obtaining OWL certificates varied by course. For subjects like divination, Muggle studies, and ancient runes, a grade of E or above was sufficient to advance and study advanced courses after the 6th year. End of this chapter. Chapter 294, Examination Preparation. For most of the main courses, OWL test scores must be at least an O to be considered satisfactory. The OWL exam is administered by the Wizarding Examination Authority, and the standards are uniform and quite strict. After the 5th grade, most wizards begin to reselect courses, choosing subjects they excel in or are interested in, aiming to obtain certificates for specialized advanced training. Historically, students above the 6th grade in Slytherin College passed 2 to 6 subjects in the OWL exam, with only Velen obtaining certificates in 6 subjects. The average number of subjects passed by the rest of the wizards was only 2 to 4. However, the current Slytherin students are different. This year's 5th grade students are taking at least 5 courses and have the opportunity to earn OWL certificates, significantly boosting their confidence and ambition to obtain more certificates. It's important to note that obtaining more OWL certificates now increases the opportunity to take more Newt certificates in the 7th grade. The wizarding world values diplomas highly. Whether in the Ministry of Magic, Gringotts, Magic News, Magic Radio, various publishing houses, or major broomstick manufacturing companies, priority is given to wizards with excellent grades and strong abilities. Especially in the current environment of the British magical world, where the average Hogwarts graduate holds 2 to 4 certificates, Slytherin students with an average of more than 5 certificates will have a competitive edge after graduation, surpassing their predecessors and colleagues from other houses. Anduin quickly walked through the underground stone door and returned to the Slytherin common room. It was only after 6 o'clock in the evening, not yet time for self-study, but the stone hall of the dungeon was already full of students. The surrounding walls were covered with inspirational banners, and all the young wizards wore dark green headbands embroidered with the word "win" in silver thread, concentrating on their review. Some students even held bread in one hand while slowly turning the pages of their books with the other, clearly saving time by eating casually while studying. A few young wizards noticed the chief's return and were about to stand up to greet him, but Anduin waved his hand, signaling them to continue without saluting. Wendy and Louis, who had been assigned by Anduin to prepare for the exam, immediately greeted him and followed him back to the representative's office. "Chief, all the test questions for all subjects have been released. We've bound them into volumes as you requested and distributed them to students of all grades. Now everyone is receiving targeted tutoring," Louis reported, handing a document to Anduin after closing the office door. "Good. Have you finished the analysis of the 5th grade exam?" Anduin asked, flipping through the materials casually before looking up at the two of them. "Yes, it's done," Wendy nodded, taking out a few pieces of parchment from a stack of documents in her arms. She reported seriously, "The OWL exams for Transfiguration over the past few years have focused on the conversion spell and the vanishing spell. There has been little change. Everyone has memorized the relevant written test materials, and all 5th grade students can complete the practical test. This course is a must for everyone to excel in." As for Defense Against the Dark Arts, the written test focused on vampires. Last year, the topic was Grindylows, and the year before that, it was werewolves. We believe this year's focus will be on werewolves. For the practical exams, curse-breaking spells and defensive spells are mandatory every year. This year, we predict that the Bart repelling curse will be included, Wendy reported efficiently, comparing the materials in her hand. "Not bad," Louis chimed in. "After intensive training, everyone can now master these spells proficiently. However, the Patronus charm remains a challenge, with more than 8% still unable to cast it. This is Armal. The Patronus charm is inherently difficult. Tell them not to force it and to focus on easier spells," Anduin advised, then turned to Louis. "Continue." "Yes, for the written potions exam, we predict they will test either the compound potion or the vitality tonic. These two potions haven't been on the test for several years. As for the practical test, we reviewed previous records and found 2 patterns. They don't test potions that have been brewed for too long, nor those just learned in the 5th grade. Based on this, and excluding the content of the previous 2 years' exams, we believe this year's practical exam will include one of 3 potions: the antidote potion, the swelling potion, or the stamina potion. I also spoke with Dean Snape this morning, and he agreed to let the 5th grade students practice these 3 potions once. It's fortunate that the potions professor is our dean. He can provide us with some advantages occasionally," Louis added with a chuckle. "Even with the opportunity to practice, we must ensure everyone can pass. Otherwise, it's a waste. When practicing potions, you and Wendy need to supervise closely to ensure everyone succeeds at least once," Anduin instructed with a slight nod. "Yes, Chief. These 3 courses and charms are the subjects we have the best chance of passing. We know what to do," Wendy replied earnestly, confidence evident in her eyes. The two continued to report their preparations to Anduin, subject by subject. They had put in a lot of effort in the last month before the exam. The study committee of Snake Academy collected all the exam questions from the past 5 years, summarized the patterns, and identified the most likely questions for this year. They then asked the students to review according to these priorities. Given the students' knowledge base, they could pass the exams with normal review. However, they aimed to pass more subjects and save time for practical exercises by focusing on the most likely questions. "Very good," Anduin nodded in satisfaction after listening to their reports. "You've done an excellent job. Now it's up to everyone else. With less than a week until the final exam, time is tight. Don't let your grades drop. Yes, Chief. Wendy and Louis responded in unison. After checking the current progress, Anduin and the two returned to the stone hall of the dungeon to monitor everyone's study situation, especially the fifth graders. He spoke with each student to understand their review progress and guided them on their review rhythm and time management. End of this chapter. Chapter 295, The Tsundere Snape. As the school year drew to a close, Hogwarts prepared for the final exams. On the morning of the exams, Anduin and all the Slytherin students gathered in the common room. Anduin stood on the familiar stone platform, looking at the group of young wizards who were neatly dressed and solemn. Today is the time to test our achievements. A final exam may not directly measure a person's ability, but it can witness your progress and the fruits of your hard work in the most intuitive way, Anduin began, his voice steady and commanding. At the same time, this is also the goal that Slytherin House has worked together for all year. Now is the time to test the results. From today, you will use your achievements and abilities to show everyone the glory of Slytherin. Victory comes first. With a stern face, Anduin issued a pre-examination declaration and shouted the slogan with full force. Victory first, glory to Slytherin. All the young wizards in the stone hall shouted in unison, their sonorous and powerful voices echoing endlessly in the dungeon. Their expressions were not as excited as one might expect, but rather calm, with only a trace of determination in their eyes. It was as if they were not chanting this slogan for ideals, but to state an established fact. Let's go, Anduin commanded blankly. Starting with the senior students, everyone lined up in a neat queue and walked out of the common room, soon merging into a dark green stream of people. The rest of the students rushing to the examination room along the road looked at this flow of people. They had grown accustomed to the queues in Slytherin House. After the habit continued for a long time, it even influenced them. Now, everyone would involuntarily line up when walking. But today's Slytherin queue brought a dignified aura to everyone around them. Just looking at the people in the snake court, they could feel a penetrating coolness. The entire final exam was carried out in such an atmosphere. Because the exam involved many subjects, 1 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, it took 4 days. Anduin was also taking the owl exams this year, but he only chose 4 subjects: transfiguration, charms, potions, and care of magical creatures. In fact, he didn't have much desire for the so-called owl certificate. He had passed too many subjects and would have more classes after entering the 6th grade. He wanted to leave more spare time for himself in the next 2 years. As the exams began, the Slytherin students gradually realized the power of the college committee's ability to guess the questions for them. Most of the exam questions in each grade were accurately predicted, and a large number of standard answers were in the review manual given to them by the department representatives. This even gave them the feeling that the exams at Hogwarts were much easier than they had imagined, not as challenging as the monthly exams. Especially for the 5th grade candidates, because of Anduin's special care for them, almost all the content of the owl exam was summarized, which made them feel more confident when taking the exam. As the exams progressed, the test scores of all the students in the school were quickly corrected. After all, except for the 5th and 7th grade exams, which were managed by the Wizarding Examination Authority, the professors of the other grades and subjects could see the results immediately. In the Hogwarts staff lounge, the results of the Slytherin students caused a sensation among the professors. Oh, God, what happened to the Slytherin students this year? Let alone failing, I didn't even see a single student with a passing grade. Professor Sinistra, the astronomy professor, stared at the report card in her hand with an expression of disbelief. Yeah, this year's Slytherin House is really amazing. I was surprised enough to see them suddenly become so law-abiding, but I didn't expect the test scores to be so impressive, another professor remarked, equally astonished. Professor McGonagall is a lion. As the dean of the college, she always appreciates well-behaved and motivated students, which has greatly changed her impression of Slytherin this year. Minerva, could it be that Slytherin's grades in Transfiguration are also good? Professor Sinistra asked, looking at Professor McGonagall in surprise. That's right. All the students scored E or above, and many have reached O. From their usual performance, I could see they were making rapid progress, but I didn't expect the results to be so outstanding, Professor McGonagall replied, nodding and smiling. Merlin's beard. Did Professor Snape feed them intelligence enhancers this year to cause such a change? Professor Sinistra joked, knowing it was impossible. Cough! Cough! Professor Flitwick, who was nearby, suddenly coughed twice. He then looked at Sinistra and subtly gestured towards the door of the faculty lounge. Professor Sinistra turned her head and found Professor Snape standing at the door, looking at her calmly with downcast eyes. Caught off guard, Sinistra smiled awkwardly, and Professor Flitwick quickly tried to smooth things over. Congratulations, Severus. The little wizards of your academy have truly excelled this year. In the spell class test, almost everyone completed the spell perfectly. I heard that the average scores in several subjects are all above E. I haven't seen such a feat among Ravenclaw students for many years. Do you have any secrets to share? Flitwick asked, complimenting Snape. Snape remained calm as he walked over and sat down slowly. He glanced at Flitwick indifferently. It's nothing special, just showing a normal level. Fortunately, they did not disgrace the academy, he said. Then, turning to Professor Sinistra, he added, as for the secret, it's not some messy potion. No potion can enable a person to cast spells calmly for several days in a row. After hearing Snape's words, all the professors around laughed awkwardly, their expressions strained. Professor Sinistra, feeling choked, couldn't help but roll her eyes. Flitwick, embarrassed, curled his lips. Didn't you see the state of your college a few years ago? Why pretend to be modest now? We all know it's Anduin's credit. If it weren't for your luck in having such a good student, your college would still be struggling. At this moment, Snape's expression was a mix of pride and restraint. His eyes sparkled, and the corners of his mouth twitched into a smile he tried to suppress, causing his cheeks to twitch uncontrollably. I just learned how to create a group on QQ and have made a book friend group, 545911622. Friends who want to discuss the plot can join the group. End of this chapter. Chapter 296. The Final Dinner. The discussions among the Hogwarts professors about Slytherin House had given Snape the limelight in front of the entire staff. However, even he did not expect that the Snake Academy under Anduin's management would be so formidable. Not only had it changed the atmosphere of the academy, but it also led to a significant improvement in everyone's grades. This was the first time that the grades of the students in Slytherin were showcased to everyone, and Snape's initial failure to realize this led to a rare moment of surprise for him. At this moment, all the professors stood up and walked out. Today was the end-of-semester dinner at Hogwarts, and Snape couldn't help but speed up his pace. He couldn't wait to take the house cup back. When the faculty and staff arrived at the auditorium, they saw that most of the students had already gathered. All of them had smiles of excitement and joy on their faces. After all, after tonight, the summer vacation was coming. In stark contrast to these cheerful students were the Slytherins. They sat upright, without any superfluous expressions. Even with their excellent final exam grades, their discipline remained unshaken. After taking their seats, the professors exchanged glances, impressed by the performance of the Slytherin students. Throughout the school year, Slytherin had maintained such a high level of discipline that it made the professors, including Snape, feel a chill and even a bit of fear towards the current Slytherin house. With Dumbledore in place, Hogwarts' end-of-semester dinner officially began. During the dinner, most of the professors and students enjoyed the banquet's food. However, they frequently glanced at the long Slytherin table. Even with the holiday starting tomorrow, the Slytherin students maintained strict dining etiquette. There was no laughter at their table, only the occasional slight sound of knives and forks against dinner plates, which even made Dumbledore look sideways frequently. In the middle of the dinner, Professor McGonagall glanced at Dumbledore inquiringly. After receiving a nod from the headmaster, she raised a spoon and tapped it against a goblet on the dining table. The sound attracted everyone's attention in the auditorium. All the students and professors understood that it was finally time for the annual house points to be announced. Dumbledore stood up at the appropriate moment. Another year has passed, and now it's time to award the House Cup. The scores of each house are as follows. No, 4, Gryffindor, with a total score of 378. Upon hearing this score, the Gryffindors showed rare smiles. Although they were still in last place this year, their scores were much higher than the previous year. Fewer fights had led to fewer points being deducted. Seeing the carefree expressions of the Gryffindors, Professor McGonagall couldn't help but roll her eyes, wondering when they would finally win over this old witch. No, 3, Hufflepuff, with a total score of 406 points. Nowhere, 2, Ravenclaw, with a total score of 437 points. And the top of the list this year is... Dumbledore glanced at the Slytherin table with a kind smile. Although he could see the joy in the eyes of the Slytherin students, none of them lost their composure. They all maintained restraint, and not a sound was heard from their direction. The leader with a total score of 635 points, Slytherin. As soon as Dumbledore finished speaking, the flags fluttering over the auditorium changed into green and silver Slytherin banners. The wizards and faculty members of the other 3 houses were startled by the amazing scores obtained by Slytherin, and then they involuntarily burst into applause. The hall erupted into congratulatory applause. Even Snape, though maintaining his usual stern expression, was clapping so vigorously that his hands seemed to blur. However, the Slytherin table remained unusually silent. The young wizards were visibly excited, but sat upright, casting curious glances at Anduin, who was seated at the center of the long table. Our unspoken question was clear. Can we applaud now? The unusual behavior of Slytherin House caught the attention of the entire school. Following the gaze of the Slytherin students, everyone turned to look at Anduin. He, however, was staring intently at the banner above him, realizing that Dumbledore had personally cast a large-scale transfiguration spell to change the courtyard banner above the auditorium. The sheer scope, distance, and the calm, silent execution of the spell without a wand were beyond Anduin's current abilities in transfiguration. When Anduin finally snapped out of his reverie, he noticed that all the teachers and students were focused on him. Understanding the situation, he began to clap calmly. With his lead, the Slytherin students finally dared to join in the applause. Although the Slytherins participated in the celebration, the other students and professors continued to focus on Anduin. Even Dumbledore raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. It was now evident to everyone that the changes in Slytherin House this year were due to this young wizard, Anduin, who had always been quite low-key. His modesty had made many forget that he was a former battle hero. This realization sparked renewed interest in Anduin, and students from other houses began to whisper among themselves, discussing him animatedly. Anduin, however, paid no mind to the comments and curious glances. His thoughts were occupied with plans for the summer vacation. Despite the stir he caused in the auditorium, the end-of-semester dinner proceeded smoothly. After the dinner, Anduin returned to the common room and dismissed everyone early, lifting the disciplinary requirements for the last 2 days so they could enjoy their final moments at school. Even with the relaxed rules, the Slytherin students had become so accustomed to discipline that they maintained their standards. The next day, as they boarded the Hogwarts Express, they continued to uphold strict discipline. Upon reaching the station and bidding farewell to his friends, Anduin headed straight to Diagon Alley without delay. However, he didn't go directly to his home there. Instead, he detoured to the adjacent Muggle block and made his way to a particular shop on the street. End of this chapter. Chapter 297, Stealing Electricity. William, long time no see, Anduin greeted as he pushed open the door of a store. Behind the counter sat William, his friend from the Muggle orphanage. "Ha-ha, Boss Anduin, I haven't seen you in years, and now you're taller than me," William exclaimed, rubbing his hands together as he approached Anduin. "It seems you're doing well," Anduin observed with a gratified smile, noting William's suit and polished appearance. "I haven't had the chance to thank you for coming over to help. As soon as you called, I came to report for duty. We owe our success to your letters and guidance over the past few years. No matter what project or stocks we invested in, as long as we followed your advice, we succeeded," William grinned. "Well, we're all brothers from the orphanage, so naturally, we share our blessings," Anduin replied with a slight grin. During his time at Hogwarts, he had kept in touch with his old friends in the Muggle world. Under his guidance, these childhood friends had made significant profits, and Anduin had a stake in their ventures. "It seems you've done everything I asked. Does this shop belong to us now?" Anduin asked, looking around the store. Apart from the counter and a few shelves, it was still empty and half-decorated. "Yes, it belongs to you. I bought this place in your name. But is there something special about this shop? The road nearby isn't very busy. What are you planning to sell?" William inquired, puzzled by Anduin's instructions. "It doesn't matter if we sell anything or make money here. As long as it's open, it can help me," Anduin replied with a slight smile, not offering a detailed explanation. He then inspected the shop thoroughly, especially the electrical circuits. "Next, I need you to contact a construction team to install the main switch in the basement. Get a certificate for high-voltage electricity installation, and then follow the drawings I provide to install several high-frequency rheostats. Just put some lights and electrical appliances around. You don't need to worry about the business. Just keep it running and using electricity normally," Anduin instructed William. "Understood." William nodded obediently, even though he didn't fully understand. Those from the orphanage had always relied on Anduin's guidance to make money, and they trusted him implicitly. After explaining everything to William, Anduin bid him farewell and returned to Diagon Alley through the leaky cauldron. As he entered his home, he saw Hog, who had returned earlier, wrestling with the stairs. Anduin's sudden appearance startled Hog. He had been gnawing on the stair column on the first floor, but in his panic, he squeezed his head into the gap between the stair railings. Now his neck was firmly stuck, and he couldn't get out. He could only watch as Anduin approached with a dark expression. "My lord, I didn't do it on purpose," Hog said, trying to sound apologetic as Anduin drew closer. Anduin ignored him and continued walking towards the stairs. This made Hog panic even more. He quickly covered his head with his paws, pleading, "I'm sorry, my lord. I was wrong." Hog thought Anduin was angry and could only beg for forgiveness. Hog begged for forgiveness, trembling, but after a while he didn't feel any movement. Carefully, he pushed the dog's paw away and looked around for Anduin. Realizing there was no sign of him, Hog noticed that Anduin had completely ignored him and had gone directly down the passage next to the stairs leading to the basement. "My lord, don't go. What should I do if you leave? My head is still stuck. Help, help, my lord," Hog cried out desperately. Hearing Hog's cries and howls from above, Anduin curled his lips in distaste. He then closed the door leading to the basement and rushed straight to his alchemy laboratory. "Hog, sooner or later, I'll find a chance to deal with him, but now is not the time to care about these trivial matters," Anduin muttered to himself as he walked quickly to the workbench. He first took out a large piece of parchment and spread it out, revealing a street plan. Anyone familiar with the wizarding world would quickly recognize it as a map of the shops in Diagon Alley, or more precisely, a floor plan of the entire block. Anduin took out various drawing and measuring tools and continued to measure and draw on the blueprint. After a while, the plan was covered with several lines. Then, he began feeling along the basement wall, measuring something, and then took out a charcoal pencil to draw on a certain stone wall. After a while, he had outlined a door-shaped pattern. The location and depth have been confirmed by the magic locator. It's not a big problem. As long as the decoration of the store is completed, we can start to set it up, Anduin nodded in satisfaction after repeated confirmation. The reason he used his connections in the Muggle world to buy the shop outside Diagon Alley and started working on these things as soon as he got home was because, at Hogwarts, he had finally completed the design and preliminary testing of the magic lathe. This newly developed magic lathe could use the Wild Thunder spell as the core to convert electrical energy into magical power. With this magical power, the lathe could automatically process, enchant, and inscribe alchemy props. However, another problem arose after developing the lathe: the source of electrical energy. While it was possible to install a diesel generator in the laboratory to generate electricity directly, Anduin found that the magic lathe had a significant demand for electrical energy. Since it involved reverse conversion, there would be some energy loss. Using diesel generators to supply it was too troublesome. A generator in the room would be unsightly, take up space, and smell bad. He didn't plan to use it for long. But there was no electrical circuit in Diagon Alley, so if he didn't want to generate electricity directly at home, he had only one choice: to steal electricity from the Muggle world. The electricity in the Muggle world was abundant, and it wouldn't be a big deal for Anduin to tap into it a little. However, to avoid being discovered by the Muggles, he had to make some disguises. Otherwise, he would violate the secrecy law. End of this chapter. Chapter 298. The Collar. Anduin pondered the shops lining both sides of Diagon Alley. Unlike some hidden magical locations, Diagon Alley wasn't concealed within a demiplane. It was merely obscured by a shielding spell and connected to adjacent blocks. This gave Anduin an idea. He found a shop closest to his house outside Diagon Alley, purchased it, and disguised it as an electrical appliance business. His plan was to dig a tunnel from the basement of his home to the Muggle shop, allowing him to run a high-power wire back to his underground laboratory. This would solve his energy and lathe problems and provide an additional underground passage to the outside world, making it easier to access the Muggle world if needed. For safety, Anduin planned to install secret doors at both ends of the tunnel and add corresponding magical protections. He could even cast Muggle-repelling charms or confusion charms on the Muggle shop to ensure no one accidentally discovered the secret. Since he didn't intend to make money from the Muggle shop, he could use the electricity without concern for the bills. With the Muggle shop needing renovation, Anduin decided to use this time to finalize the design of his magic lathe and start digging the tunnel. After planning everything, he returned to the first floor. As he stepped out, he saw Hogg still stuck, gnawing on the railing that trapped him. "My lord, you finally came out to rescue me. I don't know why this damn railing is so hard. How did I even squeeze in?" Hogg exclaimed, letting go of the railing and looking at Anduin with pleading eyes. "The whole house has been reinforced by me. It's normal that you can't chew through it. By the way, where is Kiki? I haven't seen her," Anduin asked, noticing Kiki's absence. "She went to the Longbottoms to help. Augusta wrote yesterday, saying their house needed cleaning. They only have 2 people, one old and one young, so I sent Kiki to assist, as you promised before," Hogg explained, shaking his head. Anduin nodded. He had indeed told Kiki to help the Longbottoms or the Weasleys if needed. He had also written to both families, informing them about the house elf. "My lord, don't just stand there. Get me out quickly," Hogg pleaded, looking almost desperate. "Get you out," Anduin mused, looking at Hogg's head stuck between the stairs. An idea struck him, and he grinned mischievously. "My lord, what are you doing? That smile is terrifying," Hogg said, panicking and eyeing Anduin warily. "It's nothing. I recently acquired a new alchemy prop and haven't tested it yet. It might help you get out of the stairs," Anduin said, pulling out a metal ring from his space ring. The ring was as wide as Hogg's neck in diameter. "Woof! Woof!" Hogg barked in shock, realizing Anduin intended to use him as a guinea pig. The ring looked suspiciously like a dog collar. Hogg had tested many of Anduin's devices before, and while some were useful, most were unreliable. He was understandably resistant to this new prop. Anduin tapped the collar twice, causing it to enlarge. He then slowly placed it around Hogg's neck. "Woof! No, no, my lord. Huh?" Hogg tried to shrink his head, but he was already stuck with nowhere to hide. As Anduin secured the collar around his neck, Hogg's protests turned into a resigned whimper. After adjusting the collar to fit his neck, Hogg noticed that nothing unusual seemed to have happened. He kept twisting his neck, but the collar felt weightless, almost as if it wasn't there at all. "This is an accessory I developed based on my research in transfiguration this year," Anduin explained, watching Hogg with a slight smile. "Don't worry. Once it's on, it will fit snugly to your body, and its camouflage function will activate, making it invisible to others." "Then I can't see it either? What's the purpose of this thing? Could it be?" Hogg's eyes widened in fear as a terrifying thought crossed his mind. "Could it be that if I make you angry, it will tighten and snap my head off?" "You have quite the imagination," Anduin chuckled, amused by Hogg's horrified expression. "Its function is somewhat related to what you said, but why don't you try channeling some magic into it?" What? You want me to channel magic into it myself? Is this some kind of torture device? Hog's face turned pale, and he groaned as if he were about to faint. If you pretend to faint now, I'll just leave you here to blend in with the stairs, Anduin said, rolling his eyes at Hog's theatrics. I can manage, Hog muttered, struggling to his feet as if he were exhausted. With acting skills like that, I should send you to the circus, Anduin said, shaking his head. Just inject some magic into the ring. It won't kill you. Really? Will it cause any pain? Hog asked cautiously, recalling some unpleasant memories. If you keep rambling, I'll show you what real pain is, Anduin warned, giving Hog a stern look. Gah! Hog gulped, steeling himself. He closed his eyes and began channeling magic into the collar. As soon as the magic touched the collar, it became visible again, glowing faintly with a magical aura. Hog felt a strange sensation as his body began to shrink. Within seconds, he had transformed from a dog that could reach Anduin's waist to a puppy no taller than a normal person's knee. Hog looked up at the now giant Anduin with a bewildered expression. End of this chapter. Chapter 299, New Products. My lord, what's the situation? Hog asked, his voice tinged with confusion. After his body had shrunk, he managed to escape the restraint of the stair railing, slipping forward and rolling to Anduin's feet. As I said, this is a new alchemy item. I call it the shrinking ring. As long as you keep inputting magic power, it can help you shrink in size. You are now in the smallest form. Once you master it, you can control your size as you like. Anduin explained with a smile, looking at Hog, who was squatting in place, bewildered. Hog raised his tiny paw in surprise, examining it closely. He sniffed it, licked it, and then got up, turning around a few times before rushing off, as if he had discovered something fascinating. He found that after his body had shrunk, everything around him seemed much larger, making his surroundings feel novel and exciting. Moreover, his smaller size meant he could now explore places he previously couldn't, such as under the table or the sofa. With this realization, Hog dashed upstairs, eager for a grand adventure. Anduin shook his head helplessly, knowing that some of the furniture in the house was likely to suffer. He slowly walked back to the third floor, not seeing Hog along the way, and wondering which corner he had disappeared into. Anduin didn't worry much about it and went straight back to his room. He sat down at his desk, contemplating his next plan. Anduin planned to open his underground alchemy factory during the summer vacation and produce the first batch of products. He aimed to have his alchemy company up and running before Christmas this year. After all, he had spent a significant amount of his savings on research and on hiring Karkaroff to help purchase materials from Europe. He needed to find a way to recoup some of that money. To open a store, he needed to prepare in advance, considering suppliers, products, pricing, and sales channels. For raw material supply, alchemy props required magic alloys, wood, furs, blood, bones, and other materials from magical animals. He had the synthetic blueprints for Paratha brass and Agrippa alloy, which were sufficient for production, allowing him to be self-sufficient in metal magic materials. For leather and wood, he planned to source from the Hogwarts Forbidden Forest. With his relationship with Hagrid, he could purchase enough raw materials from the forest. Additionally, his contacts with the Centaur tribe would help him access resources from the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Anduin nodded to himself, then spread out a piece of parchment, writing down keywords such as Forbidden Forest, Hagrid, and Centaur. Next, he considered products and pricing. He had already thought extensively about these aspects. As a standardized product, he planned to supply amulet kits primarily made of Agrippa alloy. These would include protective amulets, communication amulets, flashing amulets, and sonic boom amulets. The protective amulets, being life-saving equipment with high wear and tear, would be priced low at 10 gold galleons to increase customer loyalty. The other amulets would be priced between 12 to 15 gold galleons each. Additionally, he planned to offer magic handcuffs that could quickly drain a suspect's magic power, tracking spells, and tracking goggles to assist in tracking an arrest, and a self-checking pocket watch that could heal injuries. Unlike the protective amulet that passively activated the iron armor charm, he also planned to offer protective gloves that could actively support the iron armor charm at any time. These products did not wear out as quickly as the protective amulets. The price of the amulet is higher, fluctuating between 30 to 50 galleons, with the exact amount to be determined after discussions with the Ministry of Magic. Additionally, he prepared auxiliary combat equipment such as phase shoes and tactical vests, which can significantly enhance the combat effectiveness and survival rate of Aurors. These items are priced between 100 to 200 galleons each. He also developed a new humanoid target this year, an alchemy tool that can be used both as training equipment within the Ministry of Magic and for evaluating new Aurors. The price of 300 galleons for this tool is quite reasonable. While contemplating, Anduin recorded his thoughts on parchment. He then seemed to remember something and took out an item from his space ring. It was a metal rod about 1 meter long and as thick as an arm. One end was slightly thinner, while the other end was thicker, with 8 thinner tentacles protruding radially from the thicker end. It's possible to complete this piece of equipment before the actual opening. I tailor-made this item for the Ministry of Magic, Anduin said, examining the metal rod and rubbing his chin thoughtfully. He then put away the equipment and continued with the rest of his planning. Currently, he only plans to launch a limited number of tactical equipment products. Other equipment either involves his core technology or contains traces of black magic, making them unsuitable for exposure. As for civilian alchemy products, he is planning to get involved in that market, but he needs to establish a foundation first. With the supply of goods, products, and pricing all set, the next step is to establish sales channels. Since his primary target is the Ministry of Magic, the most important factor is having internal connections. Thinking of this, Anduin took out 2 more parchments and wrote letters to Arthur and Moody, inviting them to discuss the details. After completing these tasks, Anduin stretched comfortably. At that moment, he sensed a presence in the house and knew that Kiki had returned. When he went down to the second floor, he found the living room in disarray. All the tables, chairs, and even the lockers and cabinets were piled up like a wooden hill. Kiki stood nearby, holding a craft paper bag of ingredients, looking bewildered. "My lord," Kiki said nervously upon seeing Anduin at the stairs, "I didn't do this. I just came back." "I know," Anduin replied, nodding to Kiki. He then closed his eyes to sense the surroundings, before staring at the pile of furniture with a stern expression and shouting, "Hog!" Upon hearing Anduin's voice, the pile of furniture shook, followed by a crackling sound. A gray-faced dog's head then struggled out from the gap in the furniture. "My lord, look, I built a fortress for you. The craftsmanship is not bad," the puppy said, deliberately using a cute, high-pitched voice, and looked at Anduin eagerly. Chapter 300, The Magic Lathe. "Should I say thank you? What's the matter? I've never seen you mess around like this before," Anduin said, giving Hog a stern look. "I just wanted to test the effect of this alchemy equipment for you, but when I transformed, I forgot the furniture was on my head. Don't worry, though. The shrinking ring is of good quality and hasn't been damaged," Hog replied with an awkward grin. "Heh, if I believed you, I must have been hit in the head by a T-bow warthog." Anduin squinted his eyes, stepped forward, grabbed Hog by the neck, and pulled him out. After getting Hog out, Anduin muttered a few incantations, and a magical aura lit up on the shrinking ring. "I've imprisoned the effect of the collar. You're punished not to grow bigger for a week. Just leave me alone," Anduin said, throwing Hog aside and using a spell to restore the mess in front of him. Hog, knowing he was in trouble, quickly squatted in the corner obediently. He then looked at Cheeky, who was a little taller than him. "Hi, Cheeky. Welcome home. What shall we have for dinner?" "You are Mr. Hog? Why did you suddenly become so small?" Cheeky asked, still dazed by what had just happened. "It's a long story. My lord is no longer the same. Now, seeing such a cute puppy, he doesn't feel distressed at all. I remember when he was in school, he spoiled that cat and raccoon. Even if it knocked over the master's soup pot, it was okay. My current status is not as good as Ryan of Hagrid's family," Hog sighed sadly. "So you just want to make trouble everywhere because you're cute now? Do you think adults are fools?" Cheeky thought, rolling her eyes speechlessly at the dejected Hog. After tidying up, Anduin, Cheeky, and Hog enjoyed a hearty meal. In the following week, Hog, restricted due to his size, didn't cause any more trouble. Because he turned into a cute little puppy, other shops in Diagon Alley lifted the ban on him. Now, he was not only allowed to enter and leave his shop at will, but was also often received warmly by shop owners or customers. Of course, they may not have recognized that the current little puppy was the same as the previous big wolf dog. During this week, William's efficiency was quite impressive. All the necessary permits were obtained, and the basement of the Muggle shop was assembled with a high-frequency rheostat. The basement soon became a current transfer station capable of providing high power and high voltage. Now, as long as there were enough electrical appliances on the first floor, the shop could open. Anduin also started excavating the tunnel. Since he planned to build the tunnel into a semi-permanent fortification, he handled it meticulously. Before the excavation, he studied whether it was connected to public facilities, such as subways and sewers, and planned a safe route. He purchased a large number of stone bricks and stone support columns from the Muggle world. He used support columns every 2 meters to stabilize the tunnel, reinforced the surrounding area with magic, and laid stone brick walls to make the entire tunnel solid. After several days, Anduin finally opened up the entire tunnel and built it into an underground passage completely reinforced by stone bricks. When pulling electricity from the Muggle business, he hid the cables under the floor tiles to make hidden wires. He used spells and physics to create mechanism walls at the entrances on both sides, sealing the passages tightly. They could not be opened except with his specific key and charm. With all this settled, the energy problem of the magic lathe was finally solved. Anduin began to test the practicability of the lathe in full swing. He installed. The sample machine Anduin had made at Hogwarts was now connected to the high-voltage cables. The entire lathe resembled an industrial-grade drilling and milling machine from the Muggle world, but it was smaller, more compact, and designed for processing small objects. The lathe consisted of a basic bed, rune core, console, feed port, pressing chamber, drill bit, cutting knife, and a miniature carving knife specifically for engraving runes. Additionally, it was equipped with a washing grinder. The entire lathe was powered by magic. Once the product specifications were set and the material was placed into the feed port, the lathe would automatically handle pressing, cutting, shaping, engraving runes, and polishing, producing a complete alchemical prop. After connecting the cable, Anduin took out his wand and pointed it at the machine. The lathe lit up with numerous magical lines, and the core loaded with the Wild Thunder rune emitted a series of currents, with electric sparks bouncing off its surface. The machine roared dissonantly, causing Anduin to worry that the rune core operation had failed. However, the vibration and noise gradually stabilized, the core stopped emitting sparks, and the dazzling magical aura dimmed to a soft glow. A green light on the console indicated that the equipment was operating correctly. Anduin, relieved and excited, waved his fist in triumph. Despite being a prototype, the lathe had been costly to build, and any future upgrades would be based on this model. If it had failed, he would have been distressed for a long time. The core power is running normally, and the pressure is stable. Let's see how it performs in actual production, Anduin said, calming himself. He took out a piece of Pallasser brass raw material, threw it into the feed port, and set the console to produce a protective amulet. He then started the lathe. The lathe began to hum uniformly as the magic metal raw material was fed into the pressing bin. A series of metal rollers pressed the material into a uniformly thick metal copper plate. Magic runes flashed on the lathe, and an invisible force carried the metal plate into the bed. A mechanical arm with a drill bit activated slowly approached the metal plate and began rotating at high speed, producing dazzling sparks. The metal plate, held in place by a magical spell, floated in the air under the high-speed rotation. End of this chapter.